Okay. Thank you. And it always has to say, got it. Well, thank you everybody for coming this morning, rainy morning. I wanted to maybe do a little overview of what I'm going to do. And the idea here is kind of an introduction to gelatin printing and maybe some tips on how to do it best or how to entertain yourself or do it more interestingly if you want. And don't think of this method only as printing per se, like finished products and prints, because we mostly cannot compete with having a printing program that uses a big press and different inks and oil-based inks in particular. But this is an incredible approximation to not having a press. The more I research it and do things with it, the more I realize that the sky is the limit. But it doesn't require much to get started. So a gel plate can be, if you can all see my tabletop, a gel plate can be a gel press or product. This happens to be jelly print because I had it at home. Jelly press, sorry.
And just so everyone knows that there are two Marianas and you may have to pin the one that is
right.
The activity.
Because in order for you to see me talking and my tabletop, I need to do, there's two of us. Hi, everyone. Hi, Gail.
Hi.
Hi, welcome. So the two
Thank
plates,
you.
one is the commercial one that most people are possibly acquainted with. The other one is a homemade one. And I have lots more in our studio. Well, not lots more, a few more in this studio, but I'm very happy to share the recipe because it's not proprietary. And this is a small gelatin plate that I've already coated with some paint because I wanted to show you a particular approach to it, but this is what it is. And the nice thing about the homemade ones is they're cheap to make, relatively speaking. And you can also, if they go bad or if you nick it without realizing, you can remelt it. And you can also make some other shapes and things that you cannot make with a commercial plate. But so I'm gonna be using both today. The essential things that we need are very few. The plate, these happen to be golden high flow acrylics, but just because I have them here, I also have some heavy body regular acrylics, and you can very easily use craft acrylics also. But if you want to be more archival and more artistic with them, I recommend highly that you invest in some good quality acrylic product. And it can be, the one that's probably best is the Golden or Plaza. They're not high flow, they're fluid acrylics. So they're liquid, but they have a creaminess to them. Right now, I'm going to use the high flow because they're mostly transparent, but when I need coverage, I'm going to use something else. So you'll see me grabbing different things. So the other thing you need is a brayer or a roller. I have been known to make my own. So if anybody wants to make their own, I can tell them how to do it. But these are relatively cheap. And having a large one and a small one is nice, but not necessary. You can just, for years and years, I just did a 4-inch one and never had a little one. And so the acrylics and the papers can be anywhere from like cardstock. You don't want copy paper, although that works well. If you want to preserve your work on a copy paper, it's a little flimsy, but you certainly can try. This is just regular cardstock. It's not archival. And the thing I prefer the best is this stuff that Plaza actually sells. It's made by the Pacon or Pacon company, and it's heavy duty construction paper like your kids use, but the white and black are acid free. So it looks like a 9x12 or a double. They have a double size too in black and white. And it's like 50 sheets for $7 or something like that. It's a real deal. And so Plaza has it if you want to use it. And then you need just found objects. So I'm going to start with some printing of, I'm going to put this plate aside because the demo with this is coming up in a few minutes. And the other things I'm going to do is I'm going to use this plate, which is an 8x10. And I'm going to uncover it and put this somewhere safe. And I'm going to use it, now let me see. I'm going to use it on top of a white piece of paper because I spill over on the sides. And it's helpful to recover the, to have the paper absorb the fluid acrylics that spill over. So I can start with any color. It's good to, you know, to look at a color wheel and sort of plan your colors, but you don't have to be planful at the beginning. I am just choosing some light colors to start because I intend to later use some darker colors that I want to create some layers from. So I am using a little bit of red. And normally if I want this, because I'm giving you a demonstration and talking, I want to retard the drying time because acrylics can dry very fast. And depending on where you are, you can get them to dry even if your environment is really warm and dry, you're going to have them retard quickly. So I'm adding a golden open medium. I buy the big bottle right now, but you can also make your own retarder with some glycerin and water. If anybody wants to know, I'm happy to give them. It's about 1/3 glycerin and 2/3, and a third part glycerin and the other 2/3 is water. All right, so I'm going to smooth the coloration onto the plate, and I'm going to make what I call a background print. Now this is very light. These paints are very transparent. So I haven't, I may want to add a soft body acrylic, but not necessarily. And I'm going to take the first print, and I'm using the construction paper. Before I do that, I can make some patterns on this. Just I'm using some homemade foam stamps and tools at the end of a roll of Scotch tape. And then I've carved a few, out of large erasers, I've carved a few animal prints just to have a little bit of background. But this may come out very light, and that's okay. If it's too light for me to actually see, I may do it again. So I put the paper down and I'm smoothing it with my hands. In fact, that's all you need. Some people use a Baron, which is a printing device that smooths over a print, but you don't have to. And actually it picked up quite a lot. And you see a little bit of the texture. We're going to lose much of this texture in the next printing, but you'll see. I'm trying to create a layer. I am going to use a more contrasting color now, like a green. Oops. Okay. And I'm gonna put a little bit of the retard or the open medium. But I'm gonna also put some burnt sienna. This is a little bit, I just don't want it to be only green. And maybe a little bit of gray. Okay, so this layer will go over that one. But in between, we're going to use some vegetation, which makes a really nice printing. Can make a really nice effect. So I went looking, I went weeding yesterday in my yard, and I found quite nice things to pick up, which are mostly weeds. I didn't have to trash my plantings. The weeds make fantastic patterns. So I have a kind of one-sided design here. And if I want to make it a little more interesting, I'm going to grab a piece of cord and do a little bit of a counterbalance with some like organically placed thread. Can you see it at all? So what I'm going to do is print over this. And what I love about doing this process of printing with my hands is that I can feel where the stems are, and I press down around the stems to make sure that I get a good printing rather than a blob of white or a blob of unprotected color. And I can even lift it up a little bit and see if I'm getting some printing. And if I don't, I can let it go while I'm holding the registration, meaning the place of the paper onto the plate, so that I didn't have to reposition it. And here I saw that I need a little more pressing down. If you do this with a baron or some other object, you don't feel it. So it gives you an advantage to actually. So you get a leafy. Now I probably could have. Let me see. I probably could have gotten a little more. I didn't notice here, but let me see if I can recover a little. I normally don't do it to get a little more printing over there because I saw that I hadn't pressed enough. But this is one way in which you can get a vegetation print. But then the other nice thing is that if you take another piece of paper, when you remove these things, you get a beautiful pattern of the leaf shape. The leaf texture becomes printed. And it can be a wonderful print on its own. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm gonna come close for you to see the pattern of that the leaves created. It's so interesting to me. And again, if I had chosen very smooth planted leaves, it might not have had so much texture to go through. So I'm going to make a quick other one before moving on to other subjects. I'm going to do a yellow oxide, they call it. It's a little bit like a raw umber color and a little bit of red, but again, the red is transparent, so we'll see. And how about if I add a little bit of white? I don't want it to look white, and the reason is that white is my paper, right? So I just want to mix some of these colors, and I didn't add the retarder. A little bit of the open medium, just a few drops. And I'm brayering, getting a sort of pinkish yellow. And I will do a little more By the way, I cleaned the brayer on another sheet, and sometimes these prints can be fantastic when you lift them up. You're about to toss them and you notice some beautiful effect. So I'm going to try to do some found object printing. You know what this is? You all have bought potatoes or onions at the supermarket. And of course, you know what this is. It's polluting our world. And again, I don't want to have too many white areas. Let me see, it's just, I'm doing a gentle printing. I don't want to withdraw a lot of color because I want to make sure that the paper doesn't stay white. And this is my first of a couple of layers. So I'm picking up what I did. And that's going to be my background print. And you can see that the colors are very kind of gentle and sort of tints, really. And I am going to use a different color for the contrasting top, the blue in this case, but I'm going to put a little bit, whoops, of the quinacridone nickel azo, which used to be called gold, quinacridone gold. And golden keeps changing the name, but it's a gorgeous color. And I think I may not have enough contrast. I may want, no, I think it's gonna be okay. I just looked at the background plate, at the background print rather. Again, I'm trying to keep my brayer clean. And this time I'm going to do a couple of different. When I see that a piece of vegetation is very dense, like on average, this is going to give me a lot of just white because there's so much overlap of leaves. So I thin it out because I really want to try to capture the silhouette of the plant or of the vegetation that I'm using. So I'm going to have it be a little bit less dense and try to create that. And on the other side, I'm going to use, let's see, what is here? Some other grasses that I found. Oops. Again, I'm thinning them out a tiny bit because I don't want globs to appear. Let's see how that will do. The spring and the summer are great times to do this. In the winter, we are a little bit more deprived of this kind of material. So I'll show you what I do when I don't have vegetation or when I don't want to do vegetation printing. Again, I'm gonna lift it up and peek to see, I got a lot of globby shapes. So I'm going to go back and try to selectively print if I around the denser parts of the vegetation. Hello. So let me see. I'm going to peek again. And you see, I got some more kind of lines, which makes it a little more interesting to me than the blobs. This one is blobby still. So I'm going to go back. Remember, I'm keeping my hand on the plate. So the registration is kept and I don't need to reposition things. Now I'm going to raise this side and I see a blob here. So I'm going to go back and try to insist on picking up paint from the bottom. And my paper is about to rip, so I have to be careful not to rip it. But you see, when the fluid of the paint goes through the paper, I know that I'm pushing it. So I have to balance those two things. Let me see if I got less glob here where I wanted. Yeah, a little bit. I got a silhouette. So silhouette of plants are very interesting to me. And sometimes they can be so interesting that they identify the plant simply by the silhouette. I'm not that good at gardening, but I'm sure some of you are. So as you can see, I have a couple of, this could make a frameable print. I don't have a lot of space to, but you could see this as a frameable print, or a certainly you can put it in a card, or you can use it to cut papers that are colored in different ways. And I have I think I sent one of my pieces that is done using collage, cutting papers that I printed this way, but I didn't necessarily use as finished prints. So to do a collage, I recommend the thinner papers, and I'll talk to you about them in a moment. Right now, I've been using the heavy duty construction paper. And again, I'm now taking off the vegetation, and sometimes what this is called the ghost print, for those of you who may not know that term, it just means that it's what's left over on the plate after you pick up the first print. And I'm going to pick it up on its own. And sometimes it just makes the best print. So you never know. You have to be, and for this, this kind of the approach of gel printing lends itself to introduce you to art making, because you don't have to have a lot of preconceived notions, or know how to draw, or know how to combine certain colors. But you might get interested in those things to learn later. But let's see. So I talked too long, and I didn't get, even though I had the retarder, it didn't come out very well. So there's one thing I can do, which is to, so I can recover this. And let me see where my paper, my thinner paper is. I will try to recover it with some delicatessen paper. Or in this case, I could use delicatessen paper or Japanese kozo paper, which is a little bit thicker. So what I can do, because it's dry on the plate, is I'm going to put some matte medium on it. You can use gloss medium or whatever you like to pick up a ghost print. Or this is not pouring out. You can dry it out at the tip. Come on. Okay, it's coming out now. So a little bit, I don't need much. And I'm going to smoothly cover the plate again. And what I'm trying to do, if it works, is to pick up have the two layers, the layer that dried on the plate and the layer that I put on top, fused together so I can pick them up. And what I do is lay the paper on top, and I'm using this Japanese paper, which is very thin, and it's beautiful when you want to use it for collage because it kind of disappears. You can also use tissue paper, but tissue paper is a little bit less resistant to letting it sit. I'm going to let this sit for a moment or two longer than I do the other prints, because I want the two layers, the matte medium, which is an acrylic, and the previous dry layer, which is also acrylic, to fuse together, okay, and then be allowed to be lifted onto my paper. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer than you hope, but let's see. I'm in a pretty dry environment. So as you can see, it is lifting it. But it's also very easy to tear it. So I have to carefully maneuver the paper out. But you see, it cleaned up my plate. There's no pattern on the plate. And here is the ghost print. So this alone, again, could be put onto a piece of white and glued on with some other things, or be framed. I think this is really lovely on its own. So you could actually use this to frame if you want, or you can, one thing that many people do is glue it onto cards and say happy birthday or something like that. It's something unique that Hallmark doesn't provide every day, but you have it yourself. So you send somebody something you made. Anyway, so these are the sort of vegetation prints that I wanted to walk you through. Please ask any questions either in the chat, and maybe if Jordan can take a look at it while I'm talking, or feel free to interrupt me, and you know how to unmute yourself temporarily with your space bar. You have one.
Mariana, I have a quick question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The technique is mostly done with paper, and I was thinking, are there other ways you can use this technique to add imagery to canvas or a panel or another surface other than paper? I'm thinking maybe if you flip the plate upside down, you're printing almost upside down.
Yes, excellent question. So, so yes, it depends on your plate and how much you can maneuver it. Like if it's a big plate, it's harder to do, but you can print directly on canvas. It takes a little practice because some plates are, especially the homemade plate is probably the softest of them all. And you are more likely to get a good printing on the canvas. But these plates, I didn't talk about how the plates are made. The plate that I call homemade is literally made with unflavored gelatin. These plates are, even though they're called gelatin plates, they have no gelatin in them. They're made with a Versa gel that is proprietary to DuPont. And that's why they cost so much. And it's not at all gelatin, but they do an excellent job printing as well, but they're a little more resilient. So I could take this plate, for example, and print onto a canvas or a board or an illustration board and be part of my developing design. So I could contribute to my own design. The easiest way to do it is to do, the small plates, which now is a good time to show you. Remember I said this homemade plate, I had put a couple of layers of things, and I wanted to show you another way of picking up. It's completely dry. And I could take this and literally put it on my canvas because it's functioning as a stamp. And that's the nice thing about being able to make your own, because you can make any size. Although they sell these now and they have them in round and they have them in elongated and all that. But being able to make this is really nice because you can really print on canvas and you can do all kinds of things you can imagine. In addition, you can print on thin paper and then glue that onto canvas or board. And I have done that in my in the design that I sent you. The larger floral piece is full of little torn pieces of collage that are done this way. But let me show you how you can pick this up. And remember I said in the previous print that dried, I picked it up with some matte medium. I'm going to switch right now and use white and put a few drops of white. I don't want to flood it. I want very little because the key here is to get the two layers to bond together. And if I have too much white, it's not going to bond. It's going to not take longer to dry. And I may not get my desired result. So I'm putting white directly on this little plate, which I had done a couple of layers onto with different colors. And quickly, I'm going to, I may have let it dry again. If I do, I'll do it again. But I'll take a piece and put it on and hold. Heat is another thing that acrylic paint is sensitive to. We probably all have experienced plastic things melting or becoming distorted when left in the sun. And that is just an inherent property of acrylics. They're always in motion. So acrylic paints, just like plastic toys and latex paint, can melt with heat. So what I'm going to try to do now is not try to do, I'm going to do it. But see, it didn't pick up completely, but it has picked up quite an amount. I could wait a little bit longer. And the heat that I'm generating with my hands may actually help me to pick up. Alternatively, I can lift and put a drop of the matte medium that I had before that I mentioned to you. And I'm going to keeping my registration, meaning I'm not moving it because I want to just recover what I missed. I'm going to see if I can pick up those 2 layers. The reason for doing the 2 layers was to show you how layering in this method can yield very interesting results. And so sometimes you don't know what you'll pick up. And if you love experimentation, this method is for you. If you're impatient and want to have more control of what you're doing, this method may drive you nuts. So it's a balance between what people want. It's a wonderful way to work with children and tempera paints. I would recommend not doing acrylics with children or youngsters, but tempera paints. So I'm pressing a little more. I don't want to keep you just, but let me see. Hey. So what I wanted to show you is kind of the effect of the layering. And I did it on a small plate because I knew I could get it to dry. On a bigger plate, it's a little, but you see how slick it looks. Now the white provided, the white background, it would also have done it because I have a white paper, but sometimes it's wonderful to do on a transparent paper like delicatessen paper, and you get a semi-transparent or translucent print. This one is done on opaque, and you see how I picked up that whole section that it didn't line up completely because my brayering might have disturbed the alignment. But it's a really nice way of recovering something that you lost to dryness. Okay, and also you
Mariana, could you please, Mariana, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No
Put
problem.
the paper vertical, completely vertical, because if not, nobody can see the results.
Okay.
Just
Vertical.
get it closer to the camera. Vertical, vertical, vertical.
Oh, I see, because of the glare.
Turn it around so we can see it. Vertical, vertical.
Vertical.
There.
But, oh, I see, you can
You
see it
are.
on the other screen. Okay, sorry, I can come closer to this screen
There.
too.
There.
Oh, can you see it?
There.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That's funny. I didn't notice what you meant because I didn't look at the other screen. So more things. So when I don't do vegetation, and Felisa, who just asked me a question, is a wonderful colleague, and she and I have taught many classes together on this technique. I have something else that I like to try, and I'm going to show you. So I'm using what they call it transparent yellow oxide, just to let you know what I'm putting on the plate, although it's not, the colors are not as important as seeing how it's used and what results, and some quinacridone yellow gold, and the retarder. Let me put a little more on it. You know what? I'm gonna clean my brayer on this one just to keep it going to dry. And then I'm going to do some patterning on this. A little piece. And again, I try to use all the material that I generate onto another, all the paint I use somewhere else to clean it, because you never know what you get. Now, this is a piece of, like this of styrofoam, where I carved, if you can see it, some with the back of a brush or the back of a pencil. You can carve all kinds of things if you want. This one happens to have leaves. So here I am trying to get the pattern to print, and you can see that it did. And I'm going to also clean it onto another piece of paper. And I still have more, so I'm gonna press down. All right, and a couple more. Of these, and then I will print, because I want to show you something else. I'm going to next use a stencil that is hand carved, and you know, there are many commercial stencils available out there, but it's so fun when you originate your own material to design your own work, if you're a little more committed to doing art with this. So this is the first layer. And what I'm going to do is get a pretty dark, almost black, but I'm gonna add some blues as well, so that there's a little variety within the dark. I have a purple here. Nice purple dioxazine purple, and then a regular black, which is hiding from me right now. No, I had, okay, where are you, black? I'm gonna have to use the shading blade, but it's right here. Okay, and retarder. My white and my retarder look too similar, so I have to be careful. Okay, let me see if this gets dark enough. Just to offer some contrast. I can, by the way, mix colors when I go around on the plate with the brayer. And so even if I see something stuck there, for example, I can insist a little bit. I don't want to change the print too much, but I'm getting a pretty good dark. You can see, can you see it where I sampled it? No, let me make sure. Oops. Can you see it? The dark that I sampled here. So what I did earlier is I just cut a piece of it. I took a transparency and I cut the shape of a woman who is throwing a ball. And what that is going to do is going to be a mask. You'll see it in a minute, because I know you cannot see it because the transparency is lying directly on the acrylic. I am going to overprint it onto this. And again, just like the vegetation, I'm feeling for the edges when I press down on the plate. Okay, let's see. And that should not take long to pick up. So you have, again, a silhouette. I'm trying to make sure. Can you see it? Yeah, thank you. So it can be fun then you could stamp some leaves or whatever you want around this this image. But it's really cool to have like your child's picture doing something or something like that in a stencil that you can use. And the nice thing is you can reuse it in the opposite direction also. So you can also overlap many different masks. So a stencil is something that has holes in it, right? And normally that's what we call a stencil. A mask is something that prevents printing. And a stencil normally has holes and areas that also prevent printing. So a stencil, like a commercial stencil, is a mask and a stencil. But I'm going to pick up the image.
Mariana, how do you decide what is going to make a good print versus, you know, something that you'll maybe cut up later? Like how do you decide what's successful versus not?
That's a great question. So that's why I kind of have, I brought these L shapes just to guide me about, well, if this is somebody I know or something that I want to, I evaluate the negative shapes and the positive shapes and the composition, just like I would when I'm designing something. And I say, well, is this imbalance that, can you see her? Is this kind of, it has some imbalance. She's leaning in one direction, but I really like that she cuts through the other side of the paper and it creates two negative shapes that I really like. And so I might go for this as a print that I put in a mat. Alternatively, say if I had done another image, and I got this, by the way, from some advertising. You know, I look for interesting negative shapes in advertising. And again, technically it's not my image, but it's a silhouette of something I saw. So I'm not completely violating copyright, but we're in a gray area here, right? Like all collage and all other, but so I actually changed some things because I like to when I was cutting her. And so that's how I would evaluate it, just like any composition. If it's worth it to me, if it was my child, no matter what the composition, I might frame it, but not really if it's something foreign and I'm aiming for an artistic product. I would use the same compositional rules that we do, including, you know, all the elements and principles of design, including color. And I would evaluate the color. I would think about, you can outline something like this. You can always be doing things to it. And then it would be a monoprint based composition, but it would have other elements. For example, I could use pan pastels or simply markers and do some other texturing here. So it doesn't mean that it has to stay like this, but then it's a print with other elements, like a mixed media print. Does that kind of get at your question? Sometimes if it's just something like this, for example, I might use, I don't know if you can see, but the print of the stamp and the gray kind of collaborated here. And there is a little bit of a graininess of orange, which is lovely. So I might cut this piece, for example, to express something in a collage and not, you know, this is obviously not something that I would frame, but pieces of it can be helpful to me. And so I'm constantly generating printed papers, and anybody who has tried this has bags and bags of printed, not perfect prints. And the question is how to use them. One way is to embellish them further. Another way is to cut them up and make cards. Another way is to cut them up and make collage pieces and keep them. And I usually organize them, and my students know this. I usually keep them in big bags with Ziploc bags, and I keep them by warm, cool, black and white And that really helps me because if I'm looking for a yellow, hi Mia, welcome. If I'm looking for a yellow, I can go to the warms. If I'm looking for a red, same thing. If I'm looking for a mixed thing, sometimes I find it in the warm, sometimes in the cool. But this was my choice after contemplating the alternative, which would be have a bag for every color. And then I would go crazy. So the warms and cools helps me more. And I have done several works. If you indulge me for a moment, I could share my screen and show you a little bit of some of the works that I've done using papers. Is that be okay with everyone? Yeah, so I will share the screen. Let me just make sure that I'm in the PowerPoint, in the correct PowerPoint. Yeah, okay. And now I'm gonna share the screen. Oh, and go. Sorry, I'm transition slideshow. And from okay. So this is how, can you see? Can you guys see? Yeah. This is just a supply list, but this is like some, you know, matted prints that I have from a photograph I took. So I made a stencil that had the leaf patterns, and then I covered it with a white pickup, saving the as a mask what I cut out. This one is a few years ago, there was a folk festival at Galenico, and I designed the little thing that we printed on music paper. You see it in the background. So it was, so that's what we did. This is a funky print of house and building shapes. I'm fascinated by building shapes. And so I sometimes will print, and I'll show you in a minute how to do something like this. And this is one that I called in the nighttime because it was probably a pickup from a ghost print that ended up having many colors. This is from a stencil or a mask rather from an advertising. I really liked the position of this man, and I did many colors and then obscured. I picked up with his mask applied. I picked up everything else gray, so that you could still see the shape or the silhouette of the person with the colors that I initially applied. Now this is a more complex thing. This has a lot of tissue papers that have been printed this way. And unfortunately, the slide thing does not allow me to get close. This is hanging in our studio. And I can't, I don't think, oh yeah, I can make it a little bit larger. Can you see? Although I think I'm limited by, it's a low resolution copy on there. But I'll show you the next one. This one is also, this was a model that I was painting from. It's an acrylic. And then she had a very complex fan. And I had carved a stamp that had some beautiful ornamentation from like the Rococo era or something. And I decided to print it onto the fan. And I believe I did it directly on the canvas. So this was a big carved stamp that's about, I don't know, maybe 12 inches by 12 inches. And I printed it onto the fan. This one is one that actually we have on display at BWI Airport right now. There's a group show of multiple shows at BWI, but it also normally hangs in our studio. And you can see, oops, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can make it a little bit larger. You see the leaves here. I don't know if you can see my arrow. Does the arrow show? The leaves have some patterns that you couldn't really make with paint. They're kind of random. You see this one? You know, so I kind of use them for the foreground leaves. And sometimes I do a trial and error, and I will put this down, and if I don't like it, I can cover it. So that's the beauty of collage. But the collage is made with all the images that I had created by gelatin printing. The same thing with this one. And let me see if I can show you a little bit. You can see that the purples have a lot of designs or texture in them, and they're completely random, but pleasing to me, along the lines of what Jordan asked before, which is, how do I decide whether I want to use some piece for art or not, either to frame on their own or to continue working on it through a collage. So I just wanted to show you all the different things, and mostly I had a period of very floral designs. I'm going to stop sharing, but that's what I wanted to show you, how you can use the papers. For the collage, I tend to favor very thin papers so that I can make them sort of disappear and they don't have many edges or raised edges on my collage. If I did end up with raised edges and I didn't want, I would use an acrylic medium, like modeling paste or molding paste, depending on how you want to call it, to kind of gradate the edges so that it's all part of a smoother appearance on the surface of the art. Yeah. So I'm going, by the way, I rarely clean my stencils or masks. And now this one in particular, it was disappearing before. Now it has some color, so I will be able to find it again in my stash, as you can see.
Mariana, I have
Yeah.
a question. When you're talking about stencils and masks, so if you wanted to do a photograph of your kid, you would get the clear acrylic and then trace it, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's the easiest way.
Okay, but if you wanted to say you drew something like you said with holes in it, you could do that on just regular paper and then cut it out with the exact.
Oh, good question. Good question. How to make your own stencils and masks. You can use acetate sheets or mylar sheets.
Okay.
And the more transparent, the better, because you can then trace, like Kristen said. But you can also do them on freezer paper. They're wonderful on freezer paper. They may not last as long as the acetate. And that one wouldn't allow you to see through it.
Okay.
You would have to copy your design or redraw it. And I would draw it on the back of the freezer paper. In other words, not in the glossy surface, but that's what's going to help you preserve your piece. Another fabulous thing for stencils and masks is, but it's a little more expensive, is Tyvek. If you have a builder friend who has a lot of leftover Tyvek, or you can buy those envelopes, you know, at the office shop. And I did that. It used to be that you could pick them up at the US Post Office, but I think they probably, poor things, limited that now. But anyway, it doesn't matter that it has a design on it. And if you want to buy white Tyvek, you can go to Home Depot and they have it, but it's quite expensive. So I use, if we get an envelope, you know, a mailing here, I don't get rid of the Tyvek. You can do so many things with Tyvek aside from gelatin printing and stencils and stamps. So, but I highly recommend it. You can also use parchment paper. Is wonderful for stencils, and you know, you can put it in the oven, so, and it doesn't degenerate, not much over 400 degrees, so it lasts a little bit, but you can, but they can tear, it can tear more easily, that's all. So you kind of, yeah, good question. Any other questions that people have while I'm just going through? I wanted to show you, oh, I never picked her up. Sorry, I never picked her up as a silhouette. But so what I'll do now to save my stencil, if I want to save this, I'll keep this and her cut out in a clear, what do you call them? Fold, the clear sheets with 3 holes. They're not sheets, they're envelopes. So they're,
And
what do
those
we
are
call
from, I know what you're talking, those are from
Yeah,
office
but I-
supply
yeah,
stores,
from
right?
office supply stores or secondhand shops, if they have, sometimes they get rid of them. So I keep them that way. That way I know this is a stencil or a mask I want to keep, for example, and this is the image it creates. So I keep them together so I know, oh no, I may not want all this white space all around. So that's not one that I want to use. What is an Tyvek, Penny? Tyvek, Tyvek. You know how you walk by constructions and the house might say Tyvek all over the place, or there's other corporations. Tyvek is DuPont. There is another one that is like house something, and it has all that stamped all over, but they use it for insulation. Like when they're zipping up just before they put the brick or the siding or whatever. So that's what the material is. And the first thing to do is to look at envelopes that you get in the mail. And if you want some, I'm happy in class to give you some. Anyway, so I wanted to show you a little bit about my obsession, if you guys are game, with houses. I wanted to make one with houses. So what I'm gonna do is, because I want the background first, to set the houses in the background, I will put a little bit of blue. Like I'll think about, do I want daytime, nighttime? Oops, excuse me. I'll put this away. And then, do I want like grass or not grass? But just very, very loosely. I don't want to prescribe what I'm gonna do. Oh, wait a minute. I have to think backwards, and that's the hard part in this technique, that sometimes you thought about the colors you want to introduce, and then you go, oh my God, I blocked all the colors with the second printing. So you have to kind of think backwards a little bit. These colors are going to be the houses. So, okay. So the colors that I put in here are going to be part of the body of the housing. And sorry, bear with me, because and then it'll become clear to you, hopefully. Oh, I put this already, right? Okay. All right. Mia, I need an assistant. So I'm doing a light thing because I'm using these mostly transparent, but let me show you my wealth of housing shapes. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna do them horizontal. Let me know if you cannot see if I do it this way. Hold on. You can see. Yeah, I think you can see, right? So what I'm going to do is put this bridge kind of shape on the opposite side. These are little house things that I completely invented. And I tend to keep them again in my files. Maybe like that. And it's fun I did a series on houses, Greek houses, and I think I ended up with some churches, because Greeks love churches. Let's see, I don't want to put too much. So this is kind of a random application of house shapes.
Mariana, excuse me,
Yeah.
but you left the brush under the right side of your plate.
Yes.
Paintbrush under the right side of your plate. Your paintbrush
Yeah.
under the
Thank
right
you very
side.
much. Thank you. And the string. All right, let's see if it'll come up. So I had wanted to do a background, but I'm not doing a back. Yes, I am. I'm gonna get white houses right now. See, I made a mistake, meaning that I'm thinking of them as like this. And this is not that helpful to me right now, although it taught me the lesson that I thought backwards.
Mariana, can I interrupt just for a second?
Yeah.
Because I've seen this. Like, do you ever then, when you take it off right now,
Yeah.
use your original print and try to get the ghost print on those white surfaces?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You know what? It misaligns many times, but let's
Right.
try it right now. That's
Right.
a good
Okay.
suggestion.
Okay. Because I've seen people, they have
Very good suggestion. It's so light. I'm not sure I'll get
Right,
something,
okay.
but let's try it. And in this case, I should have planned the registration, which means the alignment, but I didn't. And Jelly Press and other companies are trying to sell you little rulers where you can adjust your quote registration, which just means alignment with your previous print so that you are exactly where you were before. Right now, I did it completely randomly, but you get something like this. And the reason that it didn't sort of, that it wasn't so inspirational is that it's the same color and we didn't exploit the contrast. But that's a very good suggestion. Sometimes you want to do that over printing. So in that case, you have to remember to kind of remember your alignment. But let me do, again, a background piece, which I will do with many colors. And then, yes, I will do with many colors. That's what I had intended to do, and somehow I distracted myself from doing it. A little bit of this color and a little bit of, it's good when you're starting out, by the way, to limit your color choices to a little bit of an analogous part of gamut on the color wheel. And that way you are more granted more of an opportunity to have harmony. Although I'm using very transparent pigments today. And in the studio, we have both transparent and opaque. But the transparent are very forgiving in the sense that you don't cover everything. Even if you make a mistake, it's not likely you'll and let me do some textures also. So another piece of styrofoam with just some lines. And I'll put, and have you guys, anyone bought these little sponges to clean your hands? And they have these little fins or these little tips which print out also like that. I don't know if you can see it. Let me show you. It's the texture. Can you see it at all? It has dots. It's just dots. And some other, I did a wood-like pattern. And let's see, and from a medication pill, from a medication bottle, the cover had a nice design. So there, now I'm going to do the background print. So no shapes on this one except the texture that we did with the found objects. And we got some colors and we got some lines that are going to, now I'm going to do, let's see, a contrasting, a very contrasting. So I'm going to use blues and purples. And I still can't find my black. Oh, wait a minute, no. Is it behind there? Must have fallen down. Okay, and a little bit of the retarder, which is right here. I'm not sure if the retarder is actually doing anything, but hey. I have a hair that fell down and it's creating some havoc, but that's all right. Oh, it's making extra textures. I think it's on the brayer. The hair is on the brayer. Anyway, now I get to create my little city. I'm looking for ones that have the windows already in. And we had done the bridge. Where is it? The bridge and vegetation. There. And maybe one, maybe. I have also a series on DC landmarks, and I carved, burned stencils to create like DC monuments. I can show you some other time. Okay, so I'm gonna go over what I printed before. So I'm over printing. And let's see whether this will work or not. What do you think, Mia? Will it work? Yeah. All right. Abracadabra.
Ah,
So it's a little bit too centered for my taste, but you know, you get a kind of a sense of a place or a city or a neighborhood. So you can do more, and you can do, for example, I could do a third one, and let me actually do that with some heavy body acrylics. And I'm gonna go opaque now. And again, I don't rinse them, but I'm gonna do some more houses. So I'm gonna do a few. Let's see what happens if I do a darker color. And I'm going to use this, let's see. Oh, I should have, well, I'll show you how I can rescue myself out of this one. I can put a little color here. This happens to be a Viridian that's not very good quality. And what I want to do is cover, because I already lined up the houses and I meant to do it as background. I will put the color over the houses and then remove the houses before I print. But I want some more dark, so I'm going to take another darker blue and do the same thing. Hold on one sec. Here and there. So normally I don't do this, which is to put the color over the stencils or masks. But because I goofed and I put it down, put them down too early, I don't have to start again. I can just continue to work and then remove the houses. And I'll show you. This paint has seen better days. Although sometimes you get some interesting effects that you didn't expect. Now, if I print directly on this, it's going to all get all muddled, right? So now I need to remove these. And I could put them in a vat of water, by the way, just to rinse them. Or I can let them, sometimes when I do papers like parchment, stencils, they get stronger when you let the paint dry on them. Does that make sense to people? So what I'm gonna do is literally overprint over this. Oh, this thing comes along. Then remove it. So it's a little more mysterious, if you will. You can also do like little windows, just like I have some stencils that only have little windows. And so you can overprint some window shapes. Anyway, that's that. And how do I clean the plate? I usually, if I want to switch colors, for example, I clean the plate with a little water and alcohol. This is on a hair product. In a bottle that is really nice spray from a hair product. So when I finished the product, I kept the bottle. And the plate becomes quite clean. The alternative, of course, is to let all of it dry, dirty, and then pick it up next time you use it with your first printing or putting some, oh, I kept you longer. I'm sorry. I just looked at the time. I'm sorry. Is it? I know. Thank you. I mean, I need to, so any questions, please email me or call me. I'm happy to show people supplies or to give them some advice on what to buy if you're interested in doing something with this method, or just simply for your curiosity. So let me know if you have any questions. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mariana.
It's wonderful. Thank you for
Thank
bearing with
you.
me. I really appreciate it. And I'm sorry, I didn't look at the clock. This is what happens when you gelatin print.
Fantastic.
Enjoy. Have a wonderful
presentation.
Thank
Saturday.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mariana.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You going to say something to Mariana? Say thanks, Mariana.
Thank you.
Nope.
Oh, you're not?
Nope. I don't know if she can hear you. She doesn't say anything. I say thanks, Mariana. Bye. Bye. Leave me.